Hello, mediums. Welcome to another episode of Live. I'm Josh Hayes, here with my co-host, the man who missed his calling as Mr. Clean, Scott Moon. And today we're excited to have best-selling author Autumn Birt, who is the author of The Rise of the Fifth Order series, I typed it correctly, and the military dystopian thriller series Friends of My Enemy. Autumn, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here with both of you.
It's great to have you on. This was like a show long time coming. I think Scott pitched the idea of this show back in probably July or something.
And I think it was.
And I was like, yeah, let's get her on the show. And then he was like, well, we're gonna have to wait because she's not gonna be available. So
she's running around the world on her motorcycle right now.
That's right.
So sorry.
Autumn, welcome back from your long trip. And
Thank
can you
you.
tell us a little bit about yourself and your writing?
Sure. Well, believe it or not, I did not start out to be an author. Most people at least have an inspiration when they're in high school or elementary school. I actually wanted to be a studio artist, and my first degree is studio art in English. I was hoping to be an illustrator. And then I went back and got a degree in physics and ecology, so I went into the sciences after that. So it was a long time when I finally realized that what I didn't like about art was that you can't tell a story with a single picture. And I'd always been writing on the side, so I started getting really into writing. That was probably early 2008. It took me until 2012 to finally publish Born of Water, which was the first book in the Rise of the Fifth Order series. And since then, I'm up to 12 books. I'm working on my 12th book right now.
Wow.
I love it. I really love to write and passionate about it. I've slowed down a little bit because I started doing more blog posts and some help for other authors. But I've just transitioned this spring into full-time writing and actually education too.
Well, congratulations. That's great.
You said you had 12 books published. That's since 2012?
Yes, correct.
Wow.
I did the whole science, the Rise of the Fifth Order, the other series, the dystopian one, Friends of My Enemy. I did all 4 books. I published them in the same year. Back to
very
back.
nice. And those are military dystopian type thrillers?
Yep, it's a near future apocalyptic thriller.
Okay. How long were each of those books?
Average 80 to 90,000 words. The first one's a little shorter. It's a set of 11 short stories, so I think it came closer to 70,000 words.
Okay.
Later in the show, we talk a lot more about process. We'll have to get into that because I think part of the being successful as a writer and enjoying it too is to kind of have a system that works. We've come across several different ones from all of our guests. Everybody has a little bit different way of approaching it. I'm assuming you did lots of reading as you're growing up and whatnot. Some of your favorite authors?
Oh, my first fantasy short story I discovered on my own was actually by Anne McCaffrey on Pern on an impression. And so immediately fell in love with Pern and dragons, and that was a great introduction. Mercedes Lackey was a huge influence too with her Herald Mages series. Of course, I did the whole, grew up in the 80s, so I did Dragonlance and all of those. I was one of those kids who was reading Nose in the Book before, every class in high school. Loved it. I could still devour a book easily in a day, which is great for reading other people's works. But it's harder when you get older and you have a family and then you're a writer and then you have a job. So I don't read as much as I'd like to now.
Social media and things that your phone beeps at you. And
people want to be fed. It's horrible.
Right.
Gosh dang it. Every day. It's like they just don't get enough.
And then you go on these trips around the world and they just take so much time.
Yeah, because who really wants to do that?
Exactly.
You mentioned that you started writing in 2008 and then didn't publish till 2012. The military dystopian books, was that the first thing you published, or was it the Fifth Order one?
The Fifth Order. It was the fantasy series. But what is actually funny, and most people don't realize it, is the first book of the military one, Friends of My Enemy, I hand wrote in a month while still working full time because it was one of those things I wasn't planning on writing or being a writer, but the story idea just literally overwhelmed me. And so I hand wrote this story that when I finally broke it up and knew what I was doing, took 4 books to write. It was probably only 45,000, 50,000 words. So it was more like the Cliff Notes version.
Right.
But after I wrote that and realized, oh my God, that was awesome, I started writing the fantasy story, and that's the one I ended up taking some classes on how to write books and how to develop them. They didn't even talk about e-publishing, which is hilarious looking back at like taking these courses in 2009, 2010. They're like, you have to get an agent, you have to get a publisher. That is when Amazon was starting to open it up to indie authors.
Right.
Right.
So are you completely indie published or hybrid, or how do you do that?
I am completely now. I had a small publisher for 6 months, and I divorced him. And went back to indie.
Yeah.
It was a great learning curve. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So
it was important.
So 6 months with that, I mean, what were some of your decisions? What were some of your influencing factors to do it yourself? Because it's a lot of work to do your own, to do everything yourself. You got to, it's so much responsibility, and the workload is incredible. I don't know if people understand that.
I don't think so either. And I mean, I'm traditional in the fact that I do my own formatting. You should know what you're paying people for if you end up paying it out. So I like to be in charge, so that way if I make changes, I can make them myself and not ask someone else to do it. I run my own website, and I do have a studio art background, so I've taken a lot of Photoshop lessons. I love Photoshop. So I even do my own covers. And that's,
guilty.
It's awesome though. If you like doing it, it's so much fun, and it's a nice mental break from writing the book. But
some of
it's
us
also
are better than others.
They are.
I'm definitely at the bottom of the Photoshop skill set in this little trio we got going here. Although it is fun, it is neat.
It is neat, and even just to be able to make your own graphics is so important.
Right.
So yeah, I even forget what your question was originally.
Well, just if you're indie published and you talk about the Photoshop, and you talk about doing graphics, do you format your own? Do you outsource anything now that you've had 12 books published, or you still do everything yourself?
I still do it all myself. I've gotten really fast. I can do a create space, so a print version in an hour, usually.
Wow.
Holy crap.
So I like computers. My dad's an IT person. My nephew is studying coding, so it runs in my family. I kind of like it, so it's a nice break for me to actually go in and do the formatting. And you see stuff. You can clean up stuff that you wouldn't see otherwise.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But you were asking, I remember, because why did I go back to indie after having having been with a publisher? And one of those decisions was that I had been widely distributed before, not selling a ton, but widely distributed on all the platforms. And my publisher is KDP Select only. So I had to pull everything back to him, and I immediately heard from about 10 people that didn't even know were reading my book saying, I can't get it at Barnes & Noble's now, what the frig? So they were really pissed. Yeah, and he's like, well, tell him to sign up for the street team, we'll try to get him a format. So there was that, and after a couple of KDP promos, and you see that that's literally all the promotion he was doing for me, I'm like, screw it, I can do that on my own.
Yeah,
I can do that myself and probably do it better in a lot of cases. One of the advantages of being an indie and doing a lot of that yourself is nobody cares about your work as much as you do.
Exactly.
Unless you pay them a lot of money, you can pay them to care, I guess.
Well, I think there's something to be said about small presses that do it correctly instead of small presses that just take your work and publish it for you instead of doing the stuff that a small press should do. Yeah. But that's a completely another subject. Let's talk about your fantasy books. I was scrolling through them last night, and they're very interesting to just on the cover, because it looks like they're kind of Asian based or Oriental based. Is that right, or is that just what I'm pulling from the cover?
They're more Mediterranean.
Okay.
And totally a different fantasy world. So I always think it's odd I love dragons. I love the traditional fantasy. I love elves and all of that. But when I went to sit down and write my own books, didn't use any of it. It's not a sword-based castles, nothing like that at all going on. I wrote something totally different. And it was fun, but it's tough because then you can't sell it to people who like elves. So you gotta find some other way to get their attention.
So tell us a little bit about that series. How did it come about? How did you get the idea? You said you maybe thought about it in 2008, and it took you a couple of years to write it. But what was the seed for that idea? What excites you about it?
Well, it's funny because the seed for it is actually two parts. I had a short story idea in my head that was based, modern world with a corporate executive woman who had elemental powers. For some reason, I never really read books on elemental powers, but I just suddenly was fascinated with this idea of controlling Earth. But the short story was going nowhere. I had absolutely nothing else to do with it except this original idea. She went to a convention and she sees someone who's like her but different. Something's unique about this girl. And at the same time, I was worked for the NRCS, and I was a head of my office. So I had staff. I had 8 staff under me. We had all these federal government deadlines. It was just crazy busy, really stressful. The only place you could go for quiet was the bathroom, of course.
Sure.
And there was this huge Mediterranean, literally it's 3 or 4 feet wide, Mediterranean-style painting. And I was just looking at it one day going, I wonder what that world is like. And I happened to have that short story in my head. And I'm like, elemental powers, ocean, fire, the heat of the sun. And so that's how it started. And it actually began with that exact same idea. There's a woman, she's a priestess, a water priestess, who sees a girl at a summer solstice ceremony who's like her, but ends up being incredibly different. She has a forbidden power. There are the 4 elements, fire, water, earth, and air. And there's a 5th power, the rise of the 5th order. Is different. And so it actually, I could spoil it for you, but it actually goes into a lot of Asian philosophy that there are 5 elements. And in this world, it's kind of a new world. It's not a fantasy world that's existed for like 20, 30, 40,000 years. It's, it's kind of relatively new in its creation. There's still rumors of the goddess. There's still rumors of how it was created. People are still figuring out how their magic works. So they really didn't realize that this other 5th power is something related to magic, and these people have been persecuted and killed. And so this girl ends up running for her life, and the water priestess decides to protect her.
That's very interesting because a lot of epic fantasy, typically in the genre, start in worlds that, as you say, have been around for thousands of years. I don't think I've read one yet that started relatively close to the beginning of the world. That's very interesting.
I like that it brings that element of discovery to it.
Yeah.
The reader is discovering along with the actual characters in the book are kind of in a discovery mode as well. It makes it a little bit like science fiction, some stories, because you're going into the brave new world, sort of.
That's right.
Like literally.
And I had spent some time world building. There's, at least a couple eras before what this book takes place, and one of them is a War of the Orders, which happens previously. And I'm thinking, there's also a time of learning. I'm thinking it would be so neat to go back and write something in those times as well, when it was really new and really chaotic and stuff going on.
So how is that series finished? Are you still writing in that series?
The original trilogy is complete, and I actually just bundled it. I started a new book, Games of Fire, new trilogy. And so the first book of that one is out, Spark of Defiance. I'm almost finished writing the second one, and I feel like I've been telling fans who email me almost daily, when's the next one coming out? You said July.
Where's the book?
Get on it.
I know, and I feel bad. It's not just that I've been traveling and I'm packing my house to sell it and do a whole bunch of other stuff that's going on the road. I'm full-time writer now. It should be out. But for some reason, this book, even though I know in my head what I wanted to say, is coming out very slowly. It's driving me crazy.
I've had the same exact issue with the book that I'm working on. And actually, this book that I'm working on is the 3rd book in a 4-book series. And I've had the ending in my head. I've actually had it sketched out on paper for probably a year. And every time I sit down to write it, I can't finish it. I don't know why. It's weird.
I've summed up. I've gotten so frustrated. It's like if I work on a chapter for a week, I feel like I'm stuck. So I will just write down like, blah, 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 this is how it's supposed to end. And I'll skip ahead.
Right.
I have so much editing to do. I feel bad because I'm like, I'm almost done. I have like 4 chapters left. I'm in the big climactic scene. It's going okay for this book. I usually write so much faster. I usually can do 3-4 chapters a week. This is like a chapter a week is like doing really well. And so after this, I know I'm going to have months of editing.
Oh yeah. Is the project, the more you're going to have the kind of highs and lows, and you go off charging into the sunset with all the brand new inspiration and whatnot, and then all of a sudden you have the weight of 30,000 words on your back and 15 characters, and you got to do something with them.
Yep, I've even pruned this one down. I didn't kill anyone off, but I usually write multiple POV, so each chapter is sort of like George R.R. Martin. Each chapter has a certain character that they stick to. I had too many. I am actually changing it to, like, I'm making it smaller. And I've also discovered what I didn't expect is the longer you write in a series and you have all these characters that you have a lot more personalities that you've got to stay true to and things that they have to do. And that starts slowing you down. I kind of, that's how when I finished the trilogy, I went straight from fantasy, kind of a young adult fantasy, not much, it's you could give this to an 8-year-old kid and they would not be offended by anything that happens in my fantasy book, to Friends of My Enemy, which is guns, explosion, no magic, and there's some scenes in there that you really need to be an adult to read. But my mind needed that contrast, and I'm at that point right now, and I'm only in book 2. I want to finish this trilogy, but I'm kind of like, I want to write something new with new characters and a whole clean slate.
Yeah. Do you feel like switching genres a little bit kind of has a refreshing quality to it?
Absolutely. Even the next series I want to write is dark urban fantasy. So I'm going to go from the countryside, a fantasy world that doesn't have many cities, to something that is totally dark urban and actually with elves. That'd be exciting.
There you go, elves in the city.
The two trilogies then, are they connected in the same universe?
They are. So yes, it starts with Rise of the Fifth Order, and then Games of Fire starts 6 months after the first trilogy ends.
Okay.
So people have said it really helps to have read the first one previously, but I tried to write it that there was just a few references to why everyone's really upset at this point. The world, it kind of starts the idea, hey, the world's healing, they saved it, but the heroes, you go through something like that, they're not doing quite as well. So
right. There's a cost.
There is a cost. So it starts with their cost and trying to recover from it, which leads to whole new problems, because when you're messed up, you tend to mess things up when you try to fix them.
Is it with the same characters or different characters?
There's a few new ones, but it does stick to the other ones. It starts almost more or less with the main character who's on the cover of the third book, Spirit of Life, who is Zhao. He's the one who looks Asian. So yeah, it starts sort of like with him getting in trouble, kind of flows through with his story.
I know that you have a very active fan base, and on some of your social media sites, I've seen them be pretty active. So do you get people that have favorite characters and have certain demands, or maybe are angered if they're doing something or disappearing or not getting enough face time or whatever?
Absolutely. I'm a little worried, like I said, about the one I'm writing, because I'm cutting out the POV of one of my favorite characters, but he's going through some issues, and I think that will, in a writing craft mode, I think that'll help create that separation of, hey, he's distancing himself, so you never actually enter his head as a point of view. But I know I'm going to hear from people going, oh, I wanted to know what's going on with him. We're going to have a total separation. You're going to see him kind of just being very distant and cold, and that's not like him at all. Yeah. But it's funny, as a writer, as an author, one of the things I did with the launch of my new series was to get a launch team together. And just one of the random questions it was a vetting question to see if they really had read the books, was who is your favorite character? And the responses actually moved me to tears, and that's not why I did it, but I was really overwhelmed with the responses and seeing who people related to and realizing, what was going on in their lives, that's the character they liked. It meant so much. And
that was going to be my next question, is how cool is that to get the first fan that really connects with one of your characters? Because that's pretty powerful. You know that you've really made a connection, and it's probably one of the better moments a writer can experience, is when somebody really cares about your characters.
It really is. The first time I had a comment, when I was very, very new and I was selling, if I made $100 a year on Amazon, I was like, woohoo! Yeah, that was a great year. But someone had read one of the books, and I think they were just in Rule of Fire. So, I'd only had the 2 books published at the time. And they just said, you're as good as Tolkien, and they put this on a comment on my blog post. And I have it saved. I want to frame it. It was the first comment like that, and I still read it. It means so much to me.
I'm gonna have all those tattooed probably at some point. No, I'm kidding. That'd be expensive.
That's right. You're gonna have like this walking, billboard right across.
Yeah. What is all that? Oh, it's just praise for my books. You should go buy them. Here, read this one right here. This one's
a fan. I got it tattooed right there to prove it.
So your military dystopian science fiction and epic fantasy are kind of at the way different ends of the scale when it comes to writing and genres or switching back and forth. What did you mentioned before that you kind of did it to kind of clean your slate? Are you going to go back to that genre at some point in time, or pick up those characters that you've written in that military one?
It's hard. I left it so that I could have picked up with one of the younger characters who comes in and start almost like a new set of characters and things going on. But it's also, compared to the epic fantasy, I sell 10 to 1. Epic fantasy is my big seller, and not to put off, I've had fans asking for the Friends of My Enemy to continue, and they've given me ideas specifically. I feel like I should, like, why don't you write it? I'll promote you. And honestly, I mean, it does at some point when you become a full-time professional that you have to look where the money is, and it really is in the fantasy.
Absolutely.
If Friends of My Enemy starts selling better, totally. I would love to write more in it, but at the moment I have no plans.
Yeah.
Like I said, my next one, I plan on doing something brand new and more of an urban fantasy that's more modern.
Is that kind of like a Jim Butcher type?
It could be. I mean, it fits a lot more with what's going on now. I recently watched Lost Girl, which I actually hated as a show, but I'm like, there's a lot of good ideas there. And it sort of came along with that, pulling in the mythic nature of a lot of different groups, including Native American and, going back to the roots of Celtic with the she fairies and the old branches. So I think it'll be a lot of fun to write. And like I said, a little bit of a clean slate so I can clear my mind before I launch into probably another trilogy that's same world as Rise of the Fifth Order. I like trilogies. Actually, Friends of My Enemy was supposed to be a trilogy, and a character at the end of book 2 makes a decision that I didn't see coming, so I can't imagine what the readers think, but it's perfect. It is so like him to make this decision, but it cost me another book. So it became a series, just 4 books.
Nice.
I've always liked trilogies, and I was just thinking while you're telling us about that I think outside of Stephen King and Dean Koontz, I think probably everything I've read growing up was probably some kind of trilogy of one other. I don't know. I like trilogies. I think they work well. They have a nice balance and story arc to it. They're big enough, I guess.
I do too, and I mean, there's it's one of those tough ones. I do like having things in a series because it does help as a professional for the storytelling. You know what's coming next. You have a whole thing you're unveiling. I mean, I have it plotted out pretty well before I begin. I know where things are going. But when you get into a bigger book, like there's a book series I want to read that's 9 books long, and I just don't have the time commitment. 3 books I feel like I can grasp, but 9 books I'm scared to start it and fall in love with it because I don't have time for 9 books in my life right now.
Yeah. When you get beyond 3 books, there's a definite. I'm always nervous about the 4th or 5th book in a long series.
Yeah.
Because there's it needs some new life in it, and that's a lot harder. I think writing a 9-book series is a lot different than writing a trilogy or a single book.
I agree.
A lot of people just keep pumping them out because they have a contract with their publisher and they got to write 9 more books.
Well, it's kind of like a Song of Ice and Fire. It's going to hit 7 books, but it's so like you get into book 4 and 5 and you're like, I'm really just ready to know everything and be done reading because it's so much reading that you're doing.
Yeah.
And on the flip side of that, you have like one of our previous guests and writer friends, Richard Fox, writes military science fiction, and I think his series is 9 books.
Mm-hmm.
But every book he manages to bring something cool and different into the story, and it kind of reinvents everything. And so when you get in, and his books are shorter, they're around between 75 and 90,000.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Not like 300 million thousand words like George
Not
R.
door stoppers, yeah. I admit it, I didn't make it past book 2 in the Song of Ice and Fire. I love his writing. I actually have a few pages from the first book that I photocopied or kind of like, getting in the mindset. So I'll read those to kind of like get the ideas out going. But I couldn't do the books. Too many people died. And I read, like you were saying, I probably read 2 inches and I realized it was the same freaking day. I was done. I'm like, I do not have time for this. I do not need to know 18 different characters' perspective of the same day.
Right. Yeah, it's tough. You mentioned that you do courses too.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk about that for a little while. Do you do you write nonfiction books, or are they just courses that you're putting together to teach?
Sort of both at the same time. I'm working on a blogging for authors, like how to build a platform and use a blog to attract a reader's book. And I'm also putting the course together. But I do want to do courses based to the fantasy niche. I think there's a lot of blog posts out there and there's some random information. But like I know when I took my writing courses, they were adult ed courses, they were focused basically, I was like one of the youngest people in the room, and trust me, I'm not 20 anymore, but they were 80-year-olds who wanted to do memoirs, and to go to these courses and be like, oh my gosh, you're writing fantasy. I mean, I learned nothing. My courses are based on all the things I wish I had learned in my adult ed courses.
Yeah,
that's actually a time-honored way to create any type of product or anything, is find a pain point or a need that's not being addressed, and then address it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people out there doing great marketing tips. Like I might do a little bit, but I tell people if you want to take a really good course to learn to market your books, like take Nick Stevenson's Your First 10,000 Readers.
Right.
That's what I took, and I went from making $100 a year to I've hit $1,000 a month now. So I mean, it's not enough to
That's very good.
I quit my job, but it's not enough really to live off of. I had some other stuff saved up so that I have time to transition into this and make it profitable.
So what do you put into your courses to kind of fill that niche that you're talking about?
Well, the first one I have is just kind of it was a test run because I wanted to learn the platform. The learning curve on all of this, I just learned to do a WooCommerce site so I can sell handouts and things like that. It's amazing. Like you said, I'm doing this myself. I'm learning it all myself. And so it takes time. So the first one was just on fantasy names and actually how to create a fantasy language. Because I think a lot of people want to throw that into their book and they don't realize how you hit it. And you just stumble as a reader going, I don't know what they just said, and I do not want to have to go to the glossary and look this up. You can lose readers so fast.
Mm-hmm.
But it's such a neat technique. I actually did create a fantasy language for my book, and so I did a lot of time researching how to do it right, and some easy ways to do it as well as the hard way, which is, of course, the way I did it.
There's a group of people out there called conlangers.
Conlangers.
And I actually bought a book and I haven't read it because it's like I need to be smarter. But it's constructed language. There's a whole group of people that they love to construct languages in this book, and I wish I had the name of it and I could share it. But and it goes from a naming language where you use it basically to name all your stuff, to you could speak it and write poetry in it and all that stuff and write it and all that. And so there's a lot to it. I think you're exactly right. It takes some serious consideration to do a fantasy language that doesn't distract the reader.
Right. So that was my first course.
You do the languages, and is that like one episode or one module of your course? Or
Yep. There's 7 modules, and it starts with just why it's important to come up with it, and then it gets into just names as well, easy ways of making names, because I know when I'm writing, if I can't think of a character's name or a place name that really fits, total mental, I have to stop writing until I come up with it. And so it's sort of a discussion of choosing a name is actually the first step to character development. It's the introduction the reader is going to have with that character. And so that's why we put so much emphasis on a good name, and we don't realize it usually because we're writing and we're just trying to write.
Right.
But there's a specific reason why it's such an important part. So we do 3 modules on names, and then it switches to, I think, 3 other modules on building the languages.
And that's one course. How many, do you have multiple courses on multiple subjects now, or is that just the one you've got started with?
That's the one I got started with, and I have a lot planned and a few I'm working on. Like I switched to blogging for authors because I think that's an important one that I see, like you said, a pain point. Right now, I just did a blog post on what the heck is going on with Amazon ebook sales, and it's looking at the fact that Amazon's almost at 5 million ebooks, and a lot of authors, a lot of authors are seeing our sales drop starting in May. Mine are about half of what they were before May, so something is going on that's pretty important. So finding another way of attracting readers, I think, is going to become huge in this next year.
And keeping the readers that do find you, the reader satisfaction is important, and having your super fans and all that's probably a very good thing to keep in mind from a marketing perspective.
Are these all written courses, or are they podcasts or YouTube videos, or how do you get your medium?
Video courses, but they have PDF as well as you can just download the audio.
Oh, okay.
So I try to make it easy for everyone, and like I said, there'll be a book that'll be with the blogging for authors as well. But it's all in the works, and I expect it to probably not come out till early next year. And then I have a whole bunch of the fantasy ones on just character development, specifically targeting fantasy characters, because we have different needs. You take a character development course, and half the time they're talking about romance characters.
Right.
It just doesn't work.
Yeah, if you're gonna do something, you need to do it correctly. And say, if you're gonna talk about fantasy, don't bring in laser guns and spaceships into the mix.
Well, this is a real different one, but
yeah,
we could do that.
So that it's got to take up a lot of time to develop the courses, plan the courses, put them all together, and then you still have to write. What's your normal day like when you start out? Because you're an off-gridder, right? So you've got a limited amount of time in the day. Tell us a little bit about that lifestyle and how you get your writing done.
Well, it's nice. We've been living off-grid for 5 years. The first 3 were in a yurt, which was a fabric-sided yurt, and that was still here in Maine through the winter. That was different. It was a little hard. My husband liked it more than I did. I miss it because it's for creative space. A yurt is awesome. It's beautiful. But we've had just 2 solar panels, and actually back then in the yurt we only had 1 solar panel and 4 batteries. So it functions a lot like a normal house. The house I'm in now, we're actually in the process of selling it, but it looks on the surface like a normal house. You flip a switch, the lights come on, turn the faucet, water comes out, but it is all off-grid running with just the 2 solar panels and the 4 batteries. When we were in the yurt especially, and I still had my full-time job, I'd actually take my laptop and my iPad to work with me to charge. And so when I came home, I just use their free electricity. I'd come home and just be able to run off the batteries. But now it's so sunny, right now this time of year. It only gets bad in the winter. We have a small backup generator, a 2,000-watt generator that we'll have to run for an hour or 2 in the winter a couple times.
Do you do any wind power or anything like that? I know wind power is big where we're at. Yeah,
we did, but a small windmill really sucks. It would turn on at 7 miles per hour. If the wind, as long as the wind was blowing 7 miles per hour, we thought it would turn on. Perfect answer for winter. That's usually when you don't have as much sun. Though the nice thing about the winter sun is it's actually stronger. There's less haze, so you get a lot of charging out of a sunny day in the winter. Yeah, people don't realize it, but it's just, especially in Maine, it's so short. You get a 3-hour window, and that's it.
Right.
But yeah, to actually get a really good charge out of the windmill, it needs to be going 25 miles per hour. And how many days do you have a steady wind at 25?
Well, in Kansas, it's pretty much when you get it under 65, it feels like we're in windy season right now.
So that might be good for wind power, but here, coastal Maine, where I'm at, it was not enough, so we ended up selling it.
Right, that's interesting.
Yeah,
you're the second off-gridder that we've talked. We had Michael Bunker on here, so he's obviously in a little bit different climate zone,
and he's got a beard.
And he has a beard.
That I'm so envious of when it's cold in the winter. I want to get one of those Viking knit beard hats. Oh, that'd be awesome.
Everybody's actually jealous of Michael's beard, is what I hear. It's also akin to Chuck Norris, his beard. So
nice.
You got to be careful with it.
Right.
So
beard magic.
Beard.
Sounds like a new dwarven thing.
Yeah.
I got some magic right here in my beard.
So tell us a little bit about how your writing goes during the day. For me, I wake up, drink some coffee, sit down, read what I wrote. What do you do for your process?
It used to be I would get up, I'd do social stuff in the morning before work, go to work all day. I'd come home, have some tea, talk to my husband for about 5 minutes, and then say, don't talk to me for the next hour and a half. It's my time. Leave me alone. I'll come back for its dinner and feed you. And that's pretty much how my writing went. And that hour and a half to 2 hours, if I was really pushing it, sometimes, you get inspired and I'm trying to write during dinner, which usually ended up meaning dinner was burnt, but I was happy, so we're good.
Yeah.
But with that, that's how I wrote Friends of My Enemy. I was whipping off a book in 4 months. Just the ideas were there. I had the pace, and when you're that engaged with it, the story stays alive in your head during the day. So you come home and it's just going.
Right.
Since I've quit, I'm still struggling a little bit. I like to wake up, I do some social stuff quick to get my brain going. I drink my Yeti of tea, get my mind awake. And then I like to at least write a little bit, open up my story. I'm now writing on Scrivener because my plots have become so complicated that I got lost in this book. So I had to buy Scrivener and organize myself.
It's a fantastic program.
Yeah.
God.
And so how long have you had Scrivener?
Oh, since June, I think. I finally realized that that's what was going to help me. And so I haven't formatted anything in it yet, but I love it for organization. If I have to spit it out
a video on
PDF,
that.
Oh, good. I will be looking for that.
Once I learned to format in Scrivener, I was really nervous at first because I really followed the Smashwords nuclear method, and I would do everything that way and reconstruct it, and I had this laborious process. And they were always very clean, but it took me a lot of time. Once I learned how to do it in Scrivener and liking it, it just made life a lot easier, especially for marketing when you need to make different types of media. Because, you know, some people want it in a Mobi format or EPUB. And with Scrivener, I just go tink, and it comes out and looks just like the book you would sell on Amazon, and you send it to your advanced reader team, whatever, and they love it. So I'm a huge fan of Scrivener now.
Has that increased
Josh converted me from all my old...
I'll be looking you up when I go to get my first book done. So I'm excited. But yeah, you're exactly right because of the different formatting. Especially, I just upgraded to a Mac Air from an old Mac. I mean, it was white. I got it as a school surplus sale. And it had Word on it. This one doesn't, and I'm not paying for it. And it's been fun to format books out of pages. Because you need to get it out to a doc to upload to Smashwords. And I had to go get, you know, a free online software. I did some stuff and I got it working, but it's been a headache. So I'm really hoping Scrivener helps.
Scrivener's phenomenal. I actually noticed an increase in my productivity going from just Word or say Google Docs or something to Scrivener. I found that I could write faster and obviously you said you use it for your plotting because you're able to look at it and say, okay, this is where I'm going. This is where I was. This is what I need to write. I can move it around and do whatever I need to do instead of scrolling through pages and pages and pages.
I like to split the screen now. I'll do one of two things. I'll split the screen and I'll put my glossary or table of contents or stuff in one side, and then I'll write the story. That way, if I need to go to my names and places, or I will put the chapter I just finished in one side. Then I can flip back and forth if they're connected.
That's a good idea.
So that's real nice.
Yeah.
What's when I'm away from my Scrivener computer, I'm sad.
That's true.
But they have Scrivener iOS now for your tablet.
I do. My tablet's doing okay.
What's your productivity like? Do you usually try to hit a certain number of words in a day, or?
I used to do it. I'm task oriented, which has been I always tell people it's been a really fun learning curve to have a task oriented person try to learn to write a novel. I like to finish what I start. And you can't finish a novel in any sense the day you start it. It's just impossible. So I have to break it up. At my highest point, I was doing 3.5 chapters a week in one story and writing about a half a chapter in another different series. So I actually had 2 books going and I was editing at the same time.
Wow.
I don't know how I ever saw my husband or slept. So we'll talk about those things. I don't have kids, so that helps. I just had dogs, you know, just throw food at everybody and just say, don't bother me.
Yeah.
Just scattered around at random and everybody like a scavenger hunt. We're in a scavenger hunt.
There's food. I'll just weave it out to the woods on my way home and just let them go find food, and it'll give me quiet time.
That's awesome.
It builds up self-reliance, you know. You're really doing them a favor by making them think for themselves. I'm not making you dinner because I care.
It's great. I'll try it. But so my current productivity, like I said, with this book has been a lot slower, and I'm still trying to find it's amazing how you upset your life and you think I'm going to have so much more time to write, ends up actually seeming to be less time. But I'm working on it, and I'm hoping. For a couple of days last week, it was perfect. I was getting, because Scrivener is different, so I'm not really focused on chapters anymore. They have a different way of doing word counting.
Right.
So I'm trying to do, most of my chapter lengths are about just over 2,000 words, like 2,500 words.
That's good.
So I was getting like a half a chapter done a day. So I was getting close to my normal pace. And then I joined Virtual Fantasy Con last week. So I'm like, oh, I need to do a couple things for that. So I put the book aside and focused on that. Oh, it's just waste of time. I should have just stayed with the book. It would have been so much better, because now I've lost my focus and my pace again, and I'm trying to build it back up.
It was, we've heard from several authors that have made the jump from part-time author. Well, it's actually still full-time author, but getting rid of their day job and then just focusing on the writing. We've heard it from several people that think, yes, I'm going to be like quadrupling my output now, that all I have to do is write, and for some reason that doesn't turn out to be the case. Not
even close. I'm hoping I can get back to writing a book in 4 months. Next summer, I'm actually going to be working in Oregon, my husband and I, and we're going to be working we're volunteers with the Forest Service in the Rogue River in Oregon. So we'll be in an off-grid cabin that's a 9-mile hike along a river with no internet. So I'm going to have to hike out a couple of times a week to just check on things. But I'll be able to charge my laptop, and I'm thinking, if I can't figure out how to get myself productive there, I might as well just go to Mars.
Yeah. No, there are some days where I'm like, I just want to unplug. But then there's some days that I actually do unplug, those days that I do, and I'm like, I need to check sales or whatever it is.
I got on a big writing binge last week, and I actually did a lot of writing, but I looked at my emails after about a week and not attending to them, and it's like, man, it's going to take me 4 days just to get all my to-do lists and things squared away. So
absolutely.
There's always some sort of cost.
There is, and that's what I saw when we were traveling, in August, and we were going through Labrador and Newfoundland. There would be days, especially Labrador, there was 2 Tim Hortons that had free Wi-Fi and in the entire province. And so it was days in between those 2 spots. And when you finally hit it, I checked my book stats and I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to do an advert. I only have an iPad. I hadn't even taken my laptop. And, you can't copy links very well. You can just set up something on an iPad. You're like, I'm just watching my social presence and everything go down going, this isn't going to work. I need to be able to get online more often. So that has me slightly panicked that the Forest Service guy is actually looking into where the closest cell phone signal is so I can take my hotspot with me. I just see me climbing up to the top of a mountain going, oh God, internet.
So you're pretty active on social media then? Do you have, you obviously have a Facebook, do you have Twitter and Instagram and all that kind of stuff?
Yep. Twitter, I haven't, well, actually I did recently just start Instagram because I finally upgraded to my own cell phone. I used to have just a flip phone that was with work. So obviously I never did anything on it because it belonged to the government. But now I actually have a Samsung smartphone. My first ever, and it takes photos. I'm very excited. After joining the digital age.
Yeah.
Welcome to 10 years ago.
No, it's so horrible. I'm a Luddite in so many ways. It's pathetic. But he had to show me how to text. My niece is so happy.
Yeah.
They finally know how to reach me. But yeah, so now that I have that, I did Instagram, I have Twitter. I've been on Twitter for a long, long time. I actually love Twitter.
What's your handle on Twitter?
It's actually at Wayfarer, so it's Weifarer, sorry. Weifarer. It's a long story how I ended up with that. Wayfarer with a W-A-Y, traditional spelling was already taken. So,
Weifarer. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's where I first saw your books. It's been a while ago I first saw them on Twitter when I was more active. I used to be very active on Twitter. I trying to get back to that because I did.
Well, it's changed so much. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. I love Twitter, but it's not the Twitter that I joined, in 2008 or whenever I first signed up for it. It's hard to find people. It's just a lot of posts, but it's still slightly effective. So I still have a presence. I mean, I have 17,000 followers. So it's just yeah, I like to be there and do stuff. I just got back into it again after taking a break because I was just so disgusted that I couldn't find anyone other than an Autobot.
Right.
I know. Yeah, that stuff. I've been systematically, I think it's Crowdfire is one of the programs I was trying to use to clean up, people that, haven't interacted with you for 8 months. Probably don't need to follow them anymore.
No.
Because they're probably a machine or whatever. But you can only do so much a day, and it takes a long time to clean up that list and get back to those conversations, which is what made Twitter fun in the first place.
It is. It is, and hopefully it figures itself out. Otherwise, I've moved on to Instagram. And like Pinterest, I actually love Pinterest as well, but I'm still playing around with how to actually share anything on it other than look at pretty pictures.
I really like Instagram. It's just really hard to sell on Instagram because they don't allow your links to be clickable for whatever reason. I think that if you create a business account, which I looked into the other day, I think you can set up sponsored ads where they're clickable, but just to put a link on your whatever photo, it's not clickable. I mean, I guess they could copy and paste it, but it's more for brand recognition than anything. Yeah, exactly. Do you work with any kind of, I know you mentioned that your husband also writes. Do you work with any kind of beta readers or content editors or anything like that that help you polish your stuff, or you, like you said, you do it all yourself?
I use it slightly different. I know a lot of people do editing rounds and then they do the beta readers. I pretty much use the launch team, let them have it early, and it's amazing. I mean, epic fantasy are big books. We're talking about 110,000 words, easy. Right. I don't do 200,000. 110 is about my average. They'll whip through that in a day or two, and I try to give them 2 weeks. And I've got a few really devoted fans who just seem to know the story almost better than I do at times. And they're like, oh, you probably meant this here, and could you fix that? So they give me my feedback. But for plotting and stuff, I'm really ruthless on myself. I think I have a split personality, so I can have my writing side, and I put on my editing hat, and I'm like, oh, this sucks. I leave myself comments like that all the time. Like, this sucks, tweak this, fix this up, and then I have to go back and do it.
Right. Yeah. I'm the same way. I'm completely the same way. I'll write a first draft and then go back and read it and go, nope. All of it's got to go. All of it's.
You can save the concept, but rewrite it. Yeah. So I don't use beta readers so much during the process. I think it could. There's always that things where they could help. They come up with great ideas, but I also really like the way the stories come out the way I'm doing it. So
my only problem I've ever had with beta readers is a lot of times they want you to explain a lot of stuff too early in the book. And then that kills your any type of momentum you had as far as suspense, because it doesn't make.
You want to be able to discover it as you go along, and that keeps you going through these books that are so epic.
It depends. I've also been saved from some giant cliffs that I almost went over from some beta readers and editors and stuff too. So it's always helpful.
Very important.
It's funny that you mentioned that, Scott, because I've had several people that read some of my stuff, and they get back to me like the very beginnings of the draft, and they say, so what's happening here, here, and here? And I said, well, none of that stuff matters. This the scene that you're reading. That's what I want you to read. The other stuff will come later. And they're like, no, but I want to know it right now. And I'm like, but it doesn't have anything to do with the scene. That's stuff that you're going to learn, and it's going to develop as the story goes. That's the point of the story. And they're like, yeah, but I want to know it up front. No, that's not the point. You're off the beta list.
Then one thing is valuable is even if you don't use your beta comments or like even reviews when you get them on Amazon and stuff, is I always take that stuff to heart, and a lot of times I will incorporate that into the next project.
Yeah.
Because you'll see something that could have been done better, and it's always helpful. So I mean, it's always good feedback.
Go ahead.
I would say you have an extremely engaged. I'm really impressed that your readers get back to you that quick with a book that size. So did you do anything, or you just get lucky?
I think I got lucky. I mean, it's not everyone, but a lot of them they really like to read through them. I have a few really devoted fans.
Excellent.
I cuddle them. No, we do have contests every once in a while for giveaways, but they've all bought everything, or they're on my advanced reading team, so I give it to them for free, and then they'll post a review. So they've been really awesome that way. But like I was saying, I mean, one of the recent reviews was that one of the characters, one of the strong women, you're like, well, she's gotten married. Characters change over the course of 4 or 5 books.
Sure.
So she's married. She's really, her husband's the one whose point of view I had mentioned I'm pulling back from. He's going through a really tough time, and so she's really worried about him. And they were really kind of ripe. She's this independent woman, and what are you doing to her? I'm like, okay, I got to find how to make her strong female again, but now married. So I've got to figure that out in this book, and I know that's one of my editing things is to show her stronger while she's got to be the the strength maybe her husband doesn't realize he needs and is looking for or something. But
Well,
it's
you don't
difficult.
you don't have to be a complete hermit and not rely on anybody else in the world to be
Absolutely.
a strong person. Part of being strong is being able to be in a productive relationship and work with other people. I would think that's my theory. So
I like that theory, and I noticed it was one of those weird things where, I have two different relationships are part of it. I think love is part of every book. It helps it.
Yeah.
It's not a major theme in my stories, but I did have a contrast where in one of the books, the first series, she falls in love like within 2 weeks, ends up getting married. She just instant head over heels. Another one, it's a really long developing relationship. And it's funny, that one's a little bit stronger because they know each other better, where the two who just fall instantly in love, they're still learning. They're young. They're still learning how to even be a couple.
Right.
So they have all this stuff thrown at them and they're like, yeah, we come back to each other. I like that though, because those are the stories I don't think I read as a teenager. It was, it was usually head over heels in love, instant romance. There was never a developing relationship. What happens after you fall in love and then you're stuck with each other for 20 years?
Yeah. I'm not a big romance writer or reader for that matter, but every time that I try to put it in my stories, that's one of the hardest things to get right.
Romance and humor.
Because you watch, for instance, my daughter, who's 2, loves The Little Mermaid. So we have to watch The Little Mermaid all the time.
Every day.
And I watched that movie, and it's an hour and a half long. And she sees this guy and is immediately falling in love with him. And then 3 days later, he's fallen for this other chick because of the spell. And then they work it all out, and then they get married. And I'm like, holy crap, what just happened? Like, that doesn't ever happen. But sometimes it does. Like in books, sometimes that's how it happens. It's just that quick, and there's no rhyme or reason for it at all. And so when I write some of my stories, this last book that I've been writing it's not a love story, but it has an element of 2 people falling for each other. And I had to figure out how to make it so it wasn't Little Mermaid-esque, where it wasn't just they're supposed to be together, so they need to fall in love. They have to have this growing thing between them and, have conflict and have all that. It's not starry-eyed love at first sight type of, what's the song now? I can't even think it. You got to kiss the girl.
That's right.
Moment with all the animals singing.
Right.
It's gonna be stuck in my head all day now. Thanks.
You're welcome. La 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 la. You've got to kiss the girl.
Oh, very good.
That's right. Yeah. That's gonna be played on YouTube forever, and it's gonna be a viral.
That'll be the thing that goes viral right there. Good job.
Awesome.
You mentioned that you market a little bit ago when you're talking about adverts and stuff. Mm-hmm. You're wide. You're not KDP Select, right?
Correct.
So how do you do your marketing for the other venues? So we've talked a lot about KDP on the show and how you can do marketing for Amazon. Mm-hmm. Is it the same for the other venues, or how do you make money? How do you present yourself for like iBooks or Barnes and Noble?
Right. Well, I do use Smashwords as a distributor instead of going to each individual platform, which I think, especially doing it alone, that works for me. I do know people, indie authors, who do each individual platform, and that's a lot of formatting, but it's doable, I guess, if you're really into it. And maybe if you're doing 1 book a year, but if you're hoping to have a pace of 4 books a year, that's a lot of formatting.
Yeah. Right.
There's a few book advertisers who do allow links, like BookBub. I know I've never gotten a BookBub ad. I'm just not that good. I keep trying, but BookBub is one of them, and there's a few other ones that do give out all the links. So that's perfect. And I rely heavily, the first book on both series are free on everything. And if you can't find it for free, I'll give it to you for free. The first book is always free, so I rely on that really heavily. Yeah. I promote the first books. I try to use promotion services that hand out all the links to Barnes & Nobles and iTunes. And I have seen my sales increase. I mean, it's a weird day if I don't have a sale on iTunes or Barnes & Noble. Kobo, a little less so. Kobo does prefer if you actually publish directly through them instead of a distributor.
Their Kobo writing, the Writing Life, I think, is it Kobo?
Yeah.
We're actually going to have Mark Fave on the show this month.
I will be back to listen to that.
And you with your, I just want to say this really quick on when you're talking about your links. We had Kevin Tomlinson on the show a few weeks ago, and he just took over for Draft to Digital and used Smashwords as fun. As a marketing director, but they've developed this thing called Universal Book Links. That looks like a very interesting way to put all your links into one link, so you don't have to keep track of all that stuff.
It's a pretty slick system. It's definitely worth looking into.
So is it also? Yeah, I know Amazon. There's been a few universal link systems for directing to the correct Amazon site, depending on what country you're in.
Yeah, and they do that on this one as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say, does it also do it based on formatting? Like if it knows you have a Nook, will it send you straight to Barnes and Noble?
You can. What you can do is when you have this link, and as far as I understand it, the way Kevin describes it, you can click on the link. It will take you to this page, and it'll say, "Where do you want to get your book at? Do you want it from Barnes and Noble or whatever?" And you click that link, and then it remembers what your preferred venue is, and so then every time you go back to get a book, it will take you to wherever you bought it last, or it'll remember that kind of stuff.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
definitely worth looking at. I use Smashwords for a long time, and I use Draft to Digital when I'm going wide right now. And they both have a lot of good things about them. But Draft to Digital makes it very easy. It's very nice and slick, and everything kind of seems to integrate pretty well. So I like it.
I tried it with 1 or 2 books, and I just I don't know. I didn't like the way the formatting came out, so maybe I was doing something wrong. So I went back to Smashwords, even though their meat grinder is hideous and you have to use a Word document.
Right. But you can make a really nice product through Smashwords. That's why I used it for so long, and that's why I used their nuclear method, because it's the only thing I trusted, because you clean out all that format by doing that.
Right. So. Well, we're coming up onto the hour,
and
we've just flown by. It seems like we just started the interview.
We went to Newfoundland and back.
And back in a Jeep, not in a motorcycle.
I know.
I didn't even get to all the stories about the motorcycles.
That's right. Can you tell us a little bit about where readers can kind of meet you and find your work at, and talk with you and all that kind of stuff?
Well, the easiest way to find me is my main website, which is autumnwriting.com. Chose something easy that you can look it up. I'm working on a new website that you should see hopefully up in a couple of weeks. That's going to be autumnbooks.co. Someone bought autumnbooks.com. I was so upset. I know. I was like, I have this name down. Come on.
And I saw some of your artwork for your Autumn Books thing, and that looks real nice. I mean, it looks good. I'm excited to see that when it's up there. So.
Yeah, I made that horrible author mistake of talking only about writing tips on Autumn writing, and I would feel so weird now going back and doing. I've published like untold stories. I do a lot of stuff and character information. I used to do that all the time on my blog, and now I'd feel weird because I've made it so exclusively about how to find writing resources. So I decided I need a whole new book platform. That'll be out in a couple weeks.
Excellent.
And I can't wait. So that'll be up, and that's the best way. All my links are there under the About Me and the contact page. So you can find me there, get to my Facebook page. I don't have Instagram yet. I will put my Instagram link up there soon.
And where can people find those courses?
They are also on that website. There's a link to courses, and there's a link there for free resources for writers too.
Awesome. Well, Autumn, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm glad that we were able to work it out until wait till you got back from your
patience is a virtue.
World traveling trip.
It was wonderful, and thank you for having me and for rescheduling me so that I was in the same country with you.
Absolutely.
If you want to hang out for a few minutes after the show, we usually have a kind of a post show.
Absolutely.
We learned to say that because some people, they'd be like, well, have a nice day. Then boom, they're gone.
Okay, bye. Click. All right. Well, thanks everybody who watched live on the show. It'll be up on the feed for the podcast iTunes link here probably at the end of the week. And we'll see you guys next week. I'm not sure if we have Mark on next week, but we'll be on next Monday.
On the 24th, I think, is Mark Lefay from
so I think that is next week. Yeah. Okay. Well, you guys have a good day, and we'll holler at you later. Take it easy.